Elena Vasquez stood at the observation deck of the human transport ship, watching the massive crystal structure grow larger in the viewport. The Galactic Assembly Hall looked like a giant diamond floating in space, its faceted surface reflecting the light of nearby stars. She had dreamed of this moment for years, but now that it was here, her stomach felt tight with nerves. "First time seeing it?" asked Captain Morrison, joining her at the window. "Yes," Elena replied, adjusting her formal diplomatic uniform. "It's bigger than I expected." Behind them, the other human representatives prepared for what would be the most important day in human history. After decades of proving themselves worthy, humanity was finally being invited to join the Galactic Assembly. Elena had been chosen to lead the delegation because of her skill with languages and her calm nature under pressure. The transport ship docked with a soft vibration that Elena barely felt. She took a deep breath and gathered her team. There were 12 of them total, representing all the major nations of Earth. Dr. Sarah Kim from the Asian Federation carried medical supplies as gifts. Colonel James Wright from the American Union brought samples of human art and music. Professor Zhang Wei from the European Alliance had prepared detailed reports on human science and technology. "Remember," Elena told her team as they walked toward the airlock, "we are guests here. These species have been traveling between stars for thousands of years. We need to show respect and learn from them." The airlock opened with a hiss and Elena stepped into the assembly hall for the first time. The main chamber was enormous, with a domed ceiling that seemed to stretch up forever. 12 different sections surrounded a central speaking area, each designed for a different alien species. Elena had studied them all, but seeing them in person was overwhelming. In one section sat the Kethamori, looking like living crystal sculptures with bodies that caught and reflected light in beautiful patterns. Their leader, Elder Prime Vorik, was almost 3 meters tall and had served in the assembly for over 200 years. Across from them floated the Zephyrians, beings made of gas and energy, who lived in special containment fields. They communicated through flashes of colored light and electromagnetic pulses that were translated by computer systems. Elena had practiced understanding their basic signals, but the full language was too complex for human minds. The Drakmir occupied the largest section, their reptilian forms imposing, even while seated. Their scales were dark green and black, and their eyes glowed yellow in the dim light. They were warriors by nature, but had learned to settle disputes through politics rather than violence. Their representative, War Leader Kresh, wore traditional armor that had been passed down through generations. Each species was different, but they all shared one thing: they had been here much longer than humanity. The youngest member species had joined the assembly 300 years ago. Most had been here for over 1,000 years. Elder Prime Vorik rose from his crystal throne, and the chamber fell silent. His voice was like the sound of wind chimes when he spoke, but the translation came through clearly in Elena's earpiece. "Today we welcome a new species to our assembly," he said. "The humans have shown great progress in their development. They have achieved faster-than-light travel, established colonies on multiple worlds, and demonstrated the wisdom to seek peaceful contact with other species." Elena felt a surge of pride. Humanity had worked so hard to reach this point. The wars and conflicts of the past were behind them. Earth was united, and humans had proven they could work together for the common good. "However," Vorik continued, and Elena's heart sank at the word, "as with all new members, humanity must first serve a period of learning and observation. This is our tradition, followed for over 2,000 years." A holographic document appeared in the center of the chamber. Elena read through it quickly, and her excitement began to fade. According to the terms, humanity would have probationary status for 100 years. During this time, they could attend meetings and speak when invited, but they could not vote on any decisions. Elena looked around at the other species. Some seemed sympathetic, but others had expressions that looked almost like smirks. She realized that this was probably how they had all started, as junior members waiting for the approval of their elders. 100 years seems like a long time, Elena said carefully when invited to respond. "Is there any way to shorten this period based on performance or contribution?" Vorik's crystal body flickered with what might have been amusement. "Young species often feel impatient," he said, "but wisdom comes with time. You will find that 100 years passes quickly, when you are learning from those who have mastered the art of galactic civilization. War Leader Kresh spoke next, his deep voice rumbling through the chamber. The probationary period protects everyone, he said. New species sometimes have ideas that seem good, but cause problems they do not foresee. It is better to learn our ways first. A Zephyrian representative pulsed with blue and green lights. The translation system converted this to words. The Assembly has maintained peace for millennia through careful deliberation and respect for established procedures. Haste leads to conflict. Elena nodded politely, but inside she felt disappointed. She had hoped humanity would be treated as equals, partners in building a better galaxy. Instead, they were being treated like children who needed to be supervised until they grew up. Still, she reminded herself, this was an incredible achievement. Humanity was now part of something bigger than Earth, bigger than their solar system. They would learn from species that had solved problems humans had never even thought about. We accept these terms with gratitude, Elena said formally. Humanity looks forward to learning from the wisdom of the Assembly. Vorik's approval was clear in the way his crystal form brightened. Excellent. You will be assigned observation quarters and given access to Assembly records. Your first lesson will be in tomorrow's session, where we will debate trade regulations between the Outer Rim territories. As the ceremony concluded, Elena and her team were escorted to their assigned area. It was comfortable but clearly marked as separate from the full members. Dr. Kim leaned over to Elena as they settled in. Did you notice how they talked about us? She whispered. Like we're students instead of representatives of an entire species. Elena had noticed, but she chose to stay positive. We'll prove ourselves, she said quietly. Give them time to see what humanity can contribute. Colonel Wright was less optimistic. 100 years, he muttered. By then, most of us will be dead of old age. Professor Zhang tried to lighten the mood. Think of all we'll learn, he said. These species have solved problems we're still working on. Climate control, energy production, medical treatments we can't imagine. Elena nodded, but she couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The way Vorik had spoken, the expressions on the other species' faces. It felt less like welcome and more like condescension. But she pushed the thought aside. Humanity had waited so long for this opportunity. They couldn't waste it by being suspicious or ungrateful. As the day ended and the Assembly prepared for recess, Elena looked out at the stars visible through the crystal walls. Somewhere out there was Earth, where billions of humans were celebrating this historic day. She had a responsibility to make this work, no matter how long it took or how difficult it became. Tomorrow would bring their first real Assembly session. Elena was determined to show that humanity belonged here, even if they had to prove it one day at a time. 3 months had passed since humanity joined the Assembly, and Elena was starting to understand how things really worked. She sat in the human observation section, watching another debate drag on for hours about something that could have been solved in minutes. Today's topic was trade routes between the core worlds and the Outer Rim. The Keth Mori wanted to maintain the current paths because they had historical significance. The Drakmir argued for routes that favored their military patrol schedules. The Zephyrians insisted on paths that avoided certain stellar phenomena they considered spiritually important. Elena had run the calculations herself. There was a simple solution that would reduce travel time by 30% and save enormous amounts of fuel. The math was basic. Any human traffic controller could have figured it out. But when she had tried to present her findings last week, Elder Prime Vorik had politely thanked her for her enthusiasm and suggested she spend more time studying the deeper complexities of galactic commerce. Dr. Kim leaned over to Elena and whispered, "They've been arguing about this same route for 6 months. My grandmother could have solved this problem before lunch." Elena nodded but kept her expression neutral. She had learned to be careful about showing frustration. The Assembly valued patient deliberation above all else. Any sign of impatience was seen as proof that humans were too young and impulsive to contribute meaningfully. The current speaker was Ambassador Thelon of the Aquatic Council, a species that lived in water-filled environmental suits. His translator made his words sound slow and formal. The proposed route change may seem efficient to newer perspectives, he said, but it fails to account for the cultural migration patterns of the Nebula Shepherds, who have used these space lanes for ritual journeys for over 3,000 years. Elena wanted to scream. The nebula shepherds were a nomadic species that rarely traveled those routes anymore. She had checked the traffic records. But pointing this out would be seen as disrespectful to ancient traditions. After the session ended, Elena returned to her quarters and opened her private communication channel to Earth. Admiral Chen's face appeared on the screen, his expression curious. "How are things progressing, Ambassador?" he asked. Elena chose her words carefully. All communications were probably monitored. "We're learning a great deal about assembly procedures," she said. "The decision-making process is very thorough." Admiral Chen's eyes narrowed slightly. He had known Elena for years and could read between the lines. "Any opportunities for human input?" "We've been encouraged to observe and study first," Elena replied. "Our suggestions are noted and filed for future consideration." That was diplomatic language for completely ignored, and they both knew it. Admiral Chen nodded slowly. "I see, well, keep learning. Earth is proud of your work there." After the call ended, Elena pulled up her private files. She had been keeping detailed records of every assembly session, every decision, and every time human input had been dismissed. The pattern was becoming clear, and it wasn't good. 2 weeks later, the pattern became impossible to ignore. A crisis erupted in the Vega system when a plague broke out on 3 colony worlds. The local government sent desperate requests for help to the assembly. Dr. Kim had immediate ideas. "This looks like a mutated strain of Rigelian fever," she told Elena excitedly. "We dealt with something similar on Mars 5 years ago. I know exactly how to treat it." Elena brought Dr. Kim's proposal to the next emergency session. The human doctor had prepared a detailed treatment plan that could stop the plague in its tracks within 2 weeks. The medicine was already available on human ships, and they could deliver it immediately. Elder Prime Vorik listened politely to the presentation, then turned to the assembly. "While we appreciate the enthusiasm of our newest members," he said, "this crisis requires the wisdom of experienced practitioners. The Zephyrians have successfully dealt with similar biological anomalies in the past." The Zephyrian representative pulsed with confident orange light. Through the translator, they proposed a completely different approach involving energy field manipulation and spiritual cleansing rituals. It would take 6 weeks to implement and required expensive equipment that wasn't readily available. Elena watched in horror as the assembly voted to follow the Zephyrian plan. Dr. Kim's proven medical solution was dismissed as untested in galactic conditions. "But we have the cure right now," Dr. Kim whispered urgently to Elena. "People are dying while they debate spiritual energy fields." Elena could only watch helplessly as the debate continued. When she tried to speak again, Vorik gently but firmly reminded her that probationary members should focus on observation during crisis situations. The Zephyrian plan eventually worked, but it took 2 months instead of 6 weeks, and thousands of colonists died unnecessarily. Elena's reports showed that Dr. Kim's treatment would have saved 90% of them, but when she presented this analysis, she was told that newer species often overestimate their capabilities, and that real-world results proved the assembly's wisdom. That night, Elena couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about the families who had lost loved ones, the children who would never come home, all because the assembly refused to consider that humans might actually know something useful. Colonel Wright found her in the observation lounge, staring out at the stars. "You look like someone who's seen the truth," he said, sitting down beside her. "What truth?" Elena asked. "That this isn't about learning or proving ourselves," Wright replied. "It's about staying in our place." Elena had been trying not to think about it, but Wright's words rang true. Every human suggestion was dismissed not because it was wrong, but because it came from humans. The assembly didn't want their input, they wanted their compliance. "Maybe we're being too impatient," Elena said, though she didn't really believe it anymore. Wright shook his head. "Elena, I've been watching these debates for months. Yesterday they spent 4 hours arguing about the color of ceremonial banners for a trade celebration. 4 hours for banner colors. But when we try to save lives with proven medicine, we're told we don't understand the complexities." Professor Zhang joined them, looking exhausted. "I just finished reading the historical records they gave us access to," he said. "Do you know how many species have ever graduated from probationary status?" Elena felt her heart sink. "How many?" "0, Zhang said quietly. "Not one. Ever." The Aquatic Council has been probationary for 300 years. The Silicon Collective for 400. They just keep extending the period, always finding new reasons why these species aren't ready for full membership. The three humans sat in silence, watching the stars through the crystal walls. Elena felt something breaking inside her, the hope she had carried since Earth first made contact with galactic civilization. So this is it? She asked finally. We're permanent junior members? Forever students in someone else's classroom? Wright nodded grimly. Unless we do something about it. Elena looked at him sharply. What do you mean? I mean we have choices, Wright said. We don't have to play by their rules forever. Elena wanted to argue, to insist that they could still make this work. But the evidence was overwhelming. The assembly wasn't interested in human contributions. They wanted humans to sit quietly, follow orders, and be grateful for the privilege of watching their betters make decisions. Dr. Kim joined them, having overheard the conversation. Those people died for nothing, she said quietly. I could have saved them, but they wouldn't let me because I'm human. Elena felt anger rising in her chest, not the hot, explosive kind, but the cold, determined kind that led to real change. She was starting to understand that proving humanity's worth to the assembly was impossible, because the assembly had no intention of recognizing that worth. The question was, what were they going to do about it? 6 months after joining the assembly, Elena faced the worst crisis yet. A massive asteroid was heading straight for the Vega system, threatening to destroy 3 inhabited worlds. The assembly had called an emergency session, and for once Elena thought they might actually want to hear human ideas. She was wrong. Dr. Kim had run the calculations 3 times to be sure. The asteroid will impact the second planet in 18 days, she told Elena, but we can stop it. Human nuclear pulse technology can break it apart or change its course. We've done this before, remember the Brisbane asteroid in 2387? Elena remembered. Human ships had successfully diverted a similar threat to Earth using controlled nuclear explosions. It was dangerous work, but humans had perfected the technique over decades of defending their home system. Colonel Wright had been in touch with the human fleet stationed outside assembly space. Admiral Chen has ships ready to move, he reported. We could have them in position within 5 days. The math works. We can save everyone. Elena brought their proposal to the emergency session with more hope than she had felt in months. Surely, when faced with the deaths of billions of innocent people, the assembly would put aside their prejudices and accept help from any source. Elder Prime Vorik listened to Elena's presentation with his usual patience. She explained the nuclear pulse technique, showed the calculations, and demonstrated how human ships could reach the asteroid in time. When she finished, the chamber was quiet for a long moment. Thank you for your input, Vorik said finally. However, this crisis requires careful consideration from experienced minds. We will now hear from our senior members. Elena felt her heart sink as the real debate began. War Leader Kresh of the Drakmir spoke first, his voice booming through the chamber. The Drakmir suggest evacuation, he declared. Our ships can remove the population from all 3 worlds. After the impact, we can establish new colonies on better planets. Elena couldn't believe what she was hearing. That's 3 billion people, she interrupted, forgetting protocol. You can't evacuate 3 billion people in 18 days. Vorik's crystal form flickered with displeasure. Probationary members will not interrupt senior discussions, he said coldly. The debate continued without her. The Kethmori proposed using energy fields to deflect the asteroid, but their calculations showed it would take months to build the necessary equipment. The Zephyrians suggested accepting the disaster as cosmic will and focusing on helping the survivors. The Aquatic Council wanted to study the asteroid's composition before deciding on action. Elena sat in her assigned chair, watching in horror as they debated while people prepared to die. Every hour they wasted was an hour less to save those worlds. But the assembly valued their procedures more than billions of lives. On the 4th day of debates, Elena received a priority message from Earth. Admiral Chen's face appeared on her private screen, his expression grim. Elena, our deep space monitors show the situation in Vega, he said. Earth's leadership has been following the assembly debates. We're prepared to act independently if necessary. Elena felt a mix of relief and terror. What do you mean? President Martinez has authorized Operation Guardian Shield, Chen explained. If the assembly hasn't acted by day 10, we're sending the fleet to Vega with or without permission. We won't stand by and watch genocide happen because of political procedures. Elena stared at the screen. Admiral, that could be seen as an act of aggression. It might destroy our relationship with the assembly. Chen's expression was stone cold. Elena, what relationship? They won't listen to you about saving lives. What good is a relationship that requires us to watch billions die? Elena knew he was right, but the implications terrified her. If humanity acted without assembly approval, they could be expelled from galactic civilization forever. Earth would be alone again, cut off from the wider galaxy. But as she watched the assembly spend day 5 arguing about jurisdictional authority over the asteroid, Elena began to wonder if that would really be such a bad thing. On day 8, with 10 days left until impact, Elena made one final attempt. She requested special permission to address the assembly directly. Vorik granted it with obvious reluctance. Elena stood in the center of the chamber and looked around at the alien faces staring down at her. Some looked curious, others bored, a few openly hostile. Honored members, she began. 10 days from now, 3 billion innocent people will die if we don't act. I've shown you that humanity has the technology and ships to prevent this disaster. We're not asking for credit or recognition. We just want to save lives. She paused, letting her words sink in. I know we're new here. I know we haven't earned your full trust yet. But this isn't about trust or tradition or proper procedures. This is about whether we're going to let people die when we have the power to save them. Elena pulled up a holographic display showing the doomed worlds. These aren't just numbers on a screen. They're families, children, artists, scientists, farmers. 3 billion individuals with hopes and dreams and people who love them. Some of you have colonies there. Some of you have trading partners. All of them are about to die for no reason except that this assembly can't make a decision fast enough. She looked directly at Vorik. You say we need to learn patience and wisdom from you. What wisdom is there in letting billions die while we debate? What patience can we learn from procedures that value process over people? The chamber was absolutely silent. Elena had broken every rule of assembly protocol by speaking so directly, but she didn't care anymore. Humanity offers to solve this problem, she continued. We ask nothing in return except the chance to save lives. If our methods are wrong, if our technology fails, then blame us. But if we succeed, if we save those 3 billion people, then maybe it's time to admit that newer species might occasionally have something valuable to contribute. Elena sat down, her heart pounding. The silence stretched on for what felt like hours. Finally, Elder Prime Vorik spoke. His voice was colder than Elena had ever heard it. Ambassador Vasquez, he said, your passion is understandable but misguided. Young species often believe they can solve complex problems with simple solutions. The Assembly has dealt with asteroid threats for millennia. We know the proper procedures. He gestured to the other members. The Keth-Mori energy deflection system will be ready in 43 days. It is tested, reliable, and safe. Your nuclear explosions are crude and dangerous, with unpredictable consequences. Elena felt despair wash over her. In 43 days those worlds will be gone, she said quietly. Perhaps, Vorik replied with chilling indifference. But that is preferable to risking unknown consequences from untested human methods. The Assembly makes decisions based on wisdom, not desperation. Elena stared at him in disbelief. They would rather let 3 billion people die than admit that humans might be right about something. That night, Elena sent a coded message to Admiral Chen. Proceed with Guardian Shield. The Assembly has chosen procedures over people. As she prepared for sleep, Elena realized that something fundamental had changed. For months, she had believed that humanity's goal should be earning the Assembly's respect and acceptance. Now she understood that respect couldn't be earned from people who had already decided you weren't worthy of it. Maybe it was time to stop trying to prove humanity belonged in the Assembly and start building something better instead. Ellen awoke to alarms blaring through the Assembly station. Emergency lights flashed red as she rushed to the communication center. On the main screen, she saw something that made her heart race with both pride and terror. Human ships were surrounding the asteroid. Admiral Chen's face appeared on her secure channel. His expression calm but determined. Operation Guardian Shield is in progress, he reported. We'll have the asteroid broken up within 6 hours. Elena looked around nervously. Other Assembly members were gathering, their faces showing confusion and anger. Elder Prime Vorik materialized as a hologram, his crystal form blazing with outrage. What is the meaning of this? He demanded. Human ships have entered Vega space without authorization. This is a violation of assembly protocols. Elena stood straighter. They're saving 3 billion lives, she said simply. They're interfering with assembly jurisdiction, Vorik replied coldly. We had a plan in place. A plan that would take 43 days, Elena shot back. Those people have 10 days to live. For the next 6 hours, Elena watched 2 very different scenes play out. On one screen, human ships methodically placed nuclear charges along the asteroid's surface, following procedures they had perfected over decades. The operation was clean, precise, and successful. The asteroid broke apart into harmless fragments that would burn up in planetary atmospheres or miss the worlds entirely. On the other screens, the assembly erupted in fury. War leader Kresh demanded military action against the human fleet. The Zephyrians pulsed with angry red light, claiming the humans had disrupted cosmic balance. The Aquatic Council spoke of unprecedented violations of galactic law, but Elena noticed something else. Mixed in with the outrage were messages from the 3 doomed worlds. Grateful transmissions from billions of people who would live to see another day. Children who would grow up, families who would stay together. Entire civilizations that would continue to exist because humanity had acted. When the operation finished successfully, Admiral Chen appeared before the assembly via hologram. His uniform was crisp, his bearing proud and his voice steady. The asteroid threat has been eliminated, he announced. All 3 worlds are safe. Human ships are withdrawing from Vega space immediately. The silence that followed was deafening. Elena realized that the assembly had been so focused on their procedures that they hadn't actually expected the human plan to work. Elder Prime Vorik was the first to speak, his voice trembling with rage. This unauthorized action threatens the stability of galactic civilization, he declared. Humanity has shown that they cannot be trusted to follow proper channels. Elena felt something snap inside her. Proper channels? She said, standing up without permission. Your proper channels would have killed 3 billion people. That is not the point, Vorik replied. Rules exist for reasons beyond the understanding of newer species. By acting independently, humanity has shown they are not ready for galactic citizenship. Elena looked around the chamber at faces filled with anger, resentment, and wounded pride. Not one of them seemed happy that billions of lives had been saved. They were only upset that their authority had been challenged. I need to understand something, Elena said, her voice carrying through the chamber. Are you actually angry that we saved those people? War leader Kresh slammed his armored fist on his speaking platform. You saved no one, he roared. You violated assembly space and ignored proper authority. This sets a dangerous precedent. The precedent that people matter more than procedures? Elena asked. The Zephyrian representative pulsed with cold blue light. The precedent that newer species can ignore established authority whenever they believe they know better. Elena felt a moment of clarity wash over her. This wasn't about the asteroid or the rescue. This was about power and control. The assembly couldn't tolerate the idea that humans had succeeded where they had failed, that a junior species had solved a problem the senior members couldn't handle. That evening, Elena received an encrypted message from Earth. President Martinez appeared on her screen, flanked by Admiral Chen and the Earth Council leadership. Elena, the president said, we've been monitoring the Assembly's reaction to the rescue operation. Earth's leadership has reached a unanimous decision. Elena's stomach tightened. What decision, Madam President? We're formally withdrawing from the Galactic Assembly, Martinez announced. Effective immediately. Elena felt the floor drop out from under her. Madam President, perhaps if we give them time to... Time for what? Admiral Chen interrupted. Time to find new ways to dismiss us? Elena, you've been sending reports for months. We know exactly how they treat humanity. President Martinez leaned forward. Elena, while you've been dealing with the Assembly, we've been busy. Admiral Chen, show her the reports. Elena's screen filled with data that made her eyes widen in shock. During the months she had been trying to win Assembly approval, Earth had been conducting its own diplomatic missions. They had contacted dozens of species that the Assembly considered not ready for membership. The results were stunning. The Centauri Republic had eagerly adopted human medical technology, reducing infant mortality by 60%. The Tau Ceti mining collective was using human engineering techniques to extract resources more efficiently than ever before. The New Geneva colony had implemented human agricultural methods that doubled their crop yields. 47 species have signed trade agreements with us, Admiral Chen explained. 23 have requested mutual defense pacts. 16 want to establish joint colonies. Elena, we don't need the Assembly's permission to build relationships with our neighbors. Elena stared at the data in amazement. But how did you contact all these species without the Assembly knowing? President Martinez smiled. We used our humanitarian aid missions. While you were trying to prove our worth to 12 ancient species, we were actually helping dozens of younger ones. It turns out that actions speak louder than words and results matter more than protocols. Elena felt her worldview shifting. So we're building our own alliance? We already have, Admiral Chen said. The Human Cooperative Council officially forms tomorrow. Membership is open to any species that values innovation, cooperation, and mutual respect over ancient hierarchies. Elena looked at the list of member species. Many were ones the Assembly had dismissed as primitive or not ready, but their combined resources, territory, and population actually exceeded the Assembly's. What about me? Elena asked. What about our delegation here? President Martinez's expression grew serious. That's your choice, Elena. You can resign your position and return to Earth, or you can stay and deliver humanity's formal withdrawal from the Assembly. Elena thought about the past months of frustration, dismissal, and condescension. She thought about the billions of lives that would have been lost if humanity had followed Assembly procedures. She thought about the future, decades of being treated as permanent children in someone else's civilization. Then she thought about the alternative. A galaxy where species were judged by their contributions rather than their age, where innovation was welcomed rather than feared, where saving lives mattered more than following rules. I'll deliver the message, Elena said firmly. Humanity deserves better than this, and so does the galaxy. President Martinez nodded approvingly. We thought you'd say that. Elena, you have full authority to speak for Earth in this matter. Make it clear that we're not leaving in anger. We're leaving to build something better. As the transmission ended, Elena sat in her quarters and began preparing humanity's farewell speech to the Assembly. Tomorrow she would stand before the most powerful beings in the galaxy and tell them that their newest members were walking away. The thought should have terrified her. Instead, for the first time in months, Elena felt genuinely excited about the future. Elena walked into the Assembly chamber for what she knew would be the last time. Her human delegation followed behind her, their faces calm but determined. Word had already spread about the human incident in Vega space, and the tension in the chamber was thick enough to cut with a knife. Elder Prime Vorik called the session to order, his crystal form dimmer than usual. Today we address the serious matter of humanity's violation of Assembly protocols, he announced. Ambassador Vasquez, you will explain your species' actions and accept appropriate sanctions. Elena took her place in the center of the chamber, but instead of the apologetic tone Vorik expected, her voice was clear and confident. Honored members of the Assembly, she began, I stand before you today not to apologize, but to inform you of humanity's decision to withdraw from this organization. The chamber erupted in shocked murmurs. Several species began speaking at once, their translators creating a cacophony of overlapping voices. Vorik raised his hand for silence, his crystal form flickering with what might have been panic. Withdraw, he said slowly. Ambassador, surely you don't mean to leave the Assembly entirely. Perhaps a temporary suspension while we work through these issues? Elena shook her head. No, Elder Prime Vorik, this decision is final. Earth formally withdraws from the Galactic Assembly effective immediately. War Leader Kresh rose from his seat, armor clanking. This is unprecedented, he growled. No species has ever voluntarily left the Assembly. That's correct, Elena replied calmly. Which should tell you something about how broken this system has become. The Zephyrian representative pulsed with confused yellow light. You cannot survive alone in the galaxy, their translator announced. Isolated species face countless dangers. The Assembly provides protection and guidance. Elena smiled, and it wasn't a pleasant expression. Protection from what? Guidance toward what? In the 8 months we've been here, this Assembly has prevented us from saving lives, dismissed our innovations, and treated us like children who need constant supervision. She activated a holographic display that filled the center of the chamber. While we've been sitting here trying to earn your approval, humanity has been building relationships throughout the galaxy. 47 species have signed trade agreements with us. 23 have mutual defense pacts. 16 are establishing joint colonies. The hologram showed a map of the galaxy with human alliance territories highlighted in blue. Elena watched with satisfaction as the assembly members realized the scope of what humanity had accomplished. The Centauri Republic reduced their infant mortality rate by 60% using human medical technology. Elena continued. The Tau Ceti Mining Collective increased their efficiency by 40% with human engineering. The New Geneva colony doubled their agricultural output with human farming methods. Elder Prime Voric's crystal form was now pulsing rapidly. These species are not ready for advanced relationships, he said. They lack the wisdom and experience needed for proper galactic citizenship. Elena's laugh was sharp and cold. According to who? You? The same assembly that would have let 3 billion people die rather than admit humans might have a good idea. She gestured to her delegation. Dr. Kim here has saved more lives in the past month than this assembly has in the past year. Colonel Wright has solved supply chain problems that you've been debating for decades. Professor Zhang has developed energy solutions that could power entire star systems. Elena's voice grew stronger as she spoke. But none of that matters to you, does it? Because we're the wrong age, the wrong species, the wrong kind of civilization. We don't fit your ancient hierarchies, so you decided we never would. The Aquatic Council representative spoke through his water-filled helmet. Young species often overestimate their abilities, he said in his slow, formal way. The assembly provides necessary restraint against dangerous impulses. Dangerous impulses? Elena repeated. Like saving lives? Like solving problems efficiently? Like treating other species as equals instead of subordinates? She turned to face Voric directly. Elder Prime Voric, you've served in this assembly for over 200 years. In that time, how many species have graduated from probationary status? Voric's silence was answer enough. 0, Elena said for him. Because this isn't about learning or proving worthiness. It's about maintaining a system where the same 12 species stay in power forever, while everyone else serves as permanent junior members. War Leader Kresh slammed his fist again. Order must be maintained, he roared. Without proper hierarchy, the galaxy descends into chaos. Elena pulled up another holographic display. Chaos? Let me show you what our chaotic alliance has accomplished in 8 months. The display showed medical breakthroughs, engineering innovations, successful diplomatic resolutions, and thriving trade networks. Species that had been struggling under assembly neglect were now prospering through human partnerships. The Rigelian plague that this assembly took 2 months to cure, our alliance stopped 3 similar outbreaks in less than a week each. The trade disputes you've been mediating for years, resolved through direct negotiation and fair profit sharing. Elena looked around the chamber at faces that showed growing alarm. The galaxy doesn't need your permission to grow and change. It's already happening, with or without you. The chamber fell silent as Elena's words sank in. Finally, Voric spoke, his voice carrying a note Elena had never heard before. Uncertainty. If you leave the assembly, he said carefully, you lose access to our accumulated knowledge, our trade networks, our protection. You'll be starting over with nothing. Elena's smile was genuine this time. Elder Prime Voric, we're not starting over. We're starting better. She gestured to her delegation, and one by one they stood up. Dr. Kim, Colonel Wright, Professor Zhang, and all the others who had spent months watching their ideas be dismissed and their expertise ignored. The Human Cooperative Council officially forms today, Elena announced. Membership is open to any species that values contribution over age, innovation over tradition, and cooperation over hierarchy. Admiral Chen's hologram materialized in the chamber, causing several assembly members to reach for weapons before realizing it was just a projection. The human fleet is departing assembly space as we speak, Chen announced. All human diplomatic staff and civilians are being evacuated. We thank the assembly for the educational experience. Elena began walking toward the exit, her delegation falling in behind her. As they reached the chamber doors, Voric called out desperately, Wait! Perhaps we can reconsider your status. Full membership immediately, with voting rights and equal representation. Elena paused and turned back. Elder Prime Voric, 3 days ago, you were willing to let 3 billion people die rather than listen to our ideas. Today, you offer us everything we asked for months ago. What changed? Voric's crystal form flickered uncertainly. We may have been hasty in our initial assessment. Elena nodded slowly. Yes, you were. But so were we. The chamber waited for her to continue. We were hasty in thinking this assembly could change, Elena said. We wasted months trying to prove ourselves worthy of a system that was designed to keep us unworthy. Thank you for teaching us that lesson. Elena turned toward the exit again, then paused for one final statement. The galaxy is changing, with or without the assembly. In 5 years, when your trade routes are obsolete and your problems multiply while ours disappear, remember this moment. Remember that you had the chance to be part of something better, and you chose to cling to something dying instead. As Elena and her delegation walked out of the assembly chamber, the sound of their footsteps echoed in absolute silence. Behind them, the 12 most powerful species in the galaxy sat stunned, perhaps for the first time in millennia, forced to confront the possibility that their way might not be the only way. Through the crystal walls of the station, Elena could see human ships forming up in departure formation, their engines already glowing for the jump to hyperspace. In a few hours, they would be back in human space, back among allies who valued them for what they could contribute, rather than dismissing them for what they lacked. Elena had come to the assembly hoping to prove that humanity belonged in galactic civilization. Instead, she had learned something far more valuable, that humanity was ready to build their own civilization, one that was better than anything the galaxy had seen before. As the human fleet jumped to hyperspace, leaving the assembly behind, Elena smiled. For the first time since arriving at the station, she felt like she was heading toward home.